Well, I met him in March of this past year, and it was on a trip down to Haiti with Partners in Health and Operation Smiles. It's a very difficult and arduous journey just to get there. It's in an area called the Central Plateau of Haiti. Very, very poor. The infrastructure for healthcare is also almost non-existent. There is a hospital there. We used that facility for that week, and midway, back down the line, I could see, this poor little fella here, and obviously that was not something that could be managed. And I knew that there were potentially other intracranial issues that had to be dealt with. So we thought it was best to try to get him up here to have a CT scan and have an evaluation with our neurosurgical team and with our team. And so it took several months, but with the help of Partners in Health, actually they helped with the visa issue and transportation and all that, and they managed to get him up here.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, this is
We're rushing up.
Well, I could tell just from looking at him, even when we were in Haiti, that he had something called a frontal encephalocele, which is actually quite rare. An encephalocele is actually a defect in the bone of the calvarium. So the calvarium is the bone that protects your brain. And during development, what ends up happening is that part of the brain and part of the covering of the brain actually protrudes through that defect. So in Dumanel's case, he had a defect essentially between his eyes, so he had a herniation of brain and the covering around the brain that was coming through essentially the top of his nose. The thing that we didn't know, though, was that Dumanel also had an arachnoid cyst, which the combination of the two made the treatment somewhat more difficult. Dr. Smith and I were involved in removing certain portions of the calvarium so that we could access the brain and the cyst. The next portion involved removing some of the bones over the eyes, and that's called the frontoorbital bandeau. So we removed that portion that was essentially on either side of the encephalocele. And then Dr. Smith removed the encephalocele, repaired the covering of the brain, and then the last portion of the procedure was really reassembling those pieces. So assembling the bones that are over the eye and assembling the frontal bones and essentially repairing the defect in the skull. With the exception of a few small incisions, you might not even know. The amount of tissue that was removed from in between his eyes is completely gone now. He has a few incisions on the lateral aspect of his nose and a little bit of edema or swelling, but after his hair grows in a little bit, I don't think you'll really notice that anything was done. It was fantastically successful.